Today's the day for left-wing infighting. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things here first. Let's see if this is working. Make sure I don't record a deaf video again. Looking good. A couple of things. Computer, just got that thing fixed. Very exciting. It was overheating for about 2 weeks. Finally replaced the cooler, so we're back in action. I'll try and be a little more consistent going forward to my lovely 10 to 20 viewers or however many I get. Man, I usually don't like doing this because it's like a waste of time. Secular Talk is like I'll say like center left leaning like YouTube guy. He does daily news content and he's done it for like a fucking decade. Usually he's like sort of milquetoast, but he tends to lean on the side of I used to watch him like pretty consistently like 4 or 5 years ago. He leans on the whole like free speech absolutist thing pretty hard. And this video came up on my feed and I was like, oh, let's see his hot take here. So we're gonna have to make fun of Kyle a little bit. But you know, it's with love. So I guess that makes it slightly better.
Changes coming to Facebook.
So for the context around this, there's a lot of social media has been basically pressured recently to start regulating misinformation. Think about like the QAnon conspiracy theories, Pizzagate conspiracy theories, random fake news stories that tend to infect our discourse, right? You're talking to somebody and they're like, oh, you know, Hillary Clinton, she's a demon and the DNC runs a child sex shop underneath the pizza place in DC. Or any innumerable other, Wayfair is selling children in furniture, discount furniture. Like, it's all pretty patently ridiculous. But I think there's a discussion to have here, and I think his points here are a little bad faith, and some of them I guess I'll try and deal with. I only watched like 9 minutes of the video, but it didn't seem like he was going to improve at all, so I think it's fair.
This is straight from Zuckerberg himself. Facebook on Monday announced that it would remove content denying or distorting the Holocaust from its platform after facing years of pressure on the issue. The company will begin directing users that search for terms associated with the Holocaust to credible information from third-party sources later this year. Facebook has long faced pressure to take action against the bevy of conspiracy theories diminishing or denying the killing of 6 million Jews by Nazis. Content that praised the Holocaust was previously banned. But with rising anti-Semitism, it was previously banned or wasn't previously banned? Anyway, but with rising anti-Semitism, we're expanding our policy to prohibit any content that denies or distorts the Holocaust as well. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg wrote in a blog post on Monday, Zuckerberg had come under intense scrutiny in 2018 for defending the right of Holocaust deniers to post on his platform. So...
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. Cal just basically read an article from The Hill for us. The reason you'd ban something like Holocaust denial is because maybe in a vacuum you could argue it's sort of harmless if people just want to speculate mildly like on the mechanisms of the Holocaust. The problem is it doesn't happen like that, and you can't view each piece of misinformation as like an individual thing that's like, oh, that was wrong, right? If you just take this very I don't want to say I'm going to say liberal approach, and I'll try and explain what I mean by this. This liberal approach of like, let's evaluate each individual piece of data and like judge that on the merits of itself, right? Like people don't function like this. A lot of people, like the way we conceive stuff is sort of like in a narrative structure, like told from our perspective. And these things seem to fit within a pattern that humans are generally like built to see. The like liberal idealism of like, you know, individual free thought, you know, reason and whatever, marketplace of ideas doesn't really work. I don't know if I even have it on this one. I have a couple of Drive accounts, drive.google.com. Maybe I'll post it in here. Okay, yeah, I do actually have it here. This article I did like debunking like the not article, but like this research I was doing debunking like the marketplace of ideas and like talking about this and going over some academic sources that discuss like how this works. I'll probably post it in the down there part. But like, if you just look at these things individually, it leads to you having to take people like Project Veritas seriously, right? And like, I think like what the marketplace idea usually doesn't like really understand properly is that people who advocate for it is that we are humans and we have finite resources. When I have to wade through mountains and mountains of bullshit to get to the truth, most people are just gonna like believe the bullshit or not be able to wade through it because we don't really have mechanisms in place that allow people to do it. By preventing misinformation, you allow people to become more accurately informed. Most people want to be accurately informed and they believe they're accurately informed, but that happens as a byproduct of how propaganda works to cultivate like ideas and beliefs, and that's generally through repetition. So if you're willing to flood a platform like Facebook or YouTube with content that repeats the same themes over and over and over again, that is how you're going to convince people that those themes, those stories that you're telling are accurate. So if you just keep spamming Facebook with like the Holocaust wasn't real, 6 million Jews, cookies in an oven, or like whatever stupid meme Nazis are on about, you will convince people that it's true. Most people like you can like just studying topics like this are stuff like historians dedicate their entire lives to, and you can have a very nuanced discussion. Like I read this really cool book called Reserve Battalion 101. I'm pretty sure it's a very long book. Let's see how long this book is. It's got to be at least like 400 fucking pages or something. Oh no, it's only 270. Okay. 270-page book by a historian named Christopher Browning, dedicated his life to understanding like this one battalion, like Police Reserve Battalion 101 in Poland, and like that's the thing that he's like a super duper expert guy on. Like the fact that any layman can just like watch a YouTube video and think they have like a robust understanding on a given topic is fucking absurd. But most people like it's sort of like a Dunning-Kruger effect where like your lack of knowledge precludes you from the capacity to understand how little you know on a topic. Dunning-Kruger. The more you know on a topic, the more you realize like, oh, I don't know shit on this topic, right? So like I happen to know a lot about criminal justice on specific areas, and because of that, I know the areas of criminal justice that I just know less about. So I'll be able to hedge conversations in that respect, knowing where I'm a little weak on information or whatever. People like this who are getting this like layman YouTube video introduction to a topic don't really get that, which is why this is like kind of stupid. Like, oh, sorry. So where I was going was the marketplace of ideas doesn't really work unless you like any market requires a degree of regulation. You need to regulate the information people get in. Does that mean you censor all differing opinions? No, but I think you can get rid of a lot of conspiracy theories if you just do like basic like fact checking like enforcement. Most of these Holocaust denial bullshit is based on a mountain of like disproven theories or inaccurate information that's just repeated, right? You'll have people like, I don't know, think about someone like, I don't know, Bill Nye the Science Guy or whatever, who goes and argues with climate denialist people or whatever the fuck. He will deal with so many people all saying the same thing, right? And I've done this plenty where like I'll talk to someone about immigration and they're like, they come here and they commit crime, and I'm like, no, they haven't. And every single conversation will go through this chain of events. Like, I already know it. I know the NPC playbook in this respect of like, okay, I know what you've been exposed to. I know what you believe. I know why you have your conclusions because you think we have similar premises of like we're both humanitarian, decent people or whatever. So in order for you to have your bastardized opinion, you need to believe that immigrants are here to rape and murder your family, steal all of our livelihood, will lead to the collapse of our country, right? So those are the facts that they're given, which are completely disanalogous to like the reality we live in. But the thing is, like, just constantly swatting down random people doesn't do anything, right? You want to stop where the bullshit is coming from because, like, these people don't want to be wrong and stupid. Most of them, like, even afterwards, like, even if I tell them they're wrong, they don't really change their minds. People kind of become entrenched with, like, beliefs like that, and they develop it as part of, like, their personality or ideology or whatever. It's very hard for people to change their mind. I get it, you know? It's a very, like... I don't want to say academic, maybe academic mindset to like enjoy being wrong. It's very hard for people to enjoy or embrace being wrong, which is what it takes to like be deconverted from shit like this. Because a lot of conspiracy theories, the way they end up functioning is like, oh, something doesn't make sense. Well, now that's actually part of the conspiracy theory. Everything exists to perpetuate and expand the conspiracy. Nothing exists to prove the conspiracy is stupid, right? Like for Pizzagate. Okay, this is the last thing. Then we'll go back into the video because I'm kind of like derailing here. So for Pizzagate, there's a guy who took the conspiracy theory seriously, and then he went to the pizza place in DC and fired a gun. Does it show it on here? Turkish press reports. Where the hell is it? Criminal responses. Edgar Mask and Welch, 28-year-old man from Salisbury, North Carolina, arrived at Comet Ping Pong and fired 3 shots from an AR-15 style rifle, struck the restaurant's wall, a desk, and a door. Told police they planned to. So this became part of their conspiracy theory, right? This guy went there to disprove the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, and then the Pizzagate people were like, haha, see? He was part of the conspiracy. They went there to make us look ridiculous. No, it's not that you guys are ridiculous. It's that this guy who believes your ridiculous bullshit went there and like he was really just an FBI plant to make you look stupid, right? Everything just serves to reinforce a conspiracy theory. It's incredibly stupid. Understanding how these work in like an environment in order to cultivate like crazy opinions and crazy beliefs is important. And I guess we'll kind of get into that.
Now, previously, as they're alluding to here, he's always kind of... He fell back on arguments of...
Speed it up a little bit here. This is killing me.
Hey, freedom of speech, and we're a platform. We don't do content moderation. That's just not what we do. That's what he used to say. Then there really has been a lot of pressure from the media, not just to crack down on stuff like this, and they do want to crack down on stuff like this, but it also goes beyond that to, like, election curating. Like, they really think, oh my god, fake news is such a giant problem and you can't allow these things to proliferate. And, in many ways, Facebook is, like, solidly right-wing. Like, usually the pages that do best are conservative pages. But I think the reason for that is just simple demographics. Like, more of the older people are on Facebook.
So, like, he's right about this, that the pages that tend to do better are the more conservative ones. And because of the demographics, I think he's largely correct about that. But the type of conservative pages that attract people are what we're talking about, right? You being on someone who's like, I like small government. Like, I don't have a fucking problem with that. No one has a fucking problem with that. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people are going to take a real issue with some, like, ideological opposition to, like, large government. Like, I think it's stupid, but I don't think it's, like, criminally stupid. Now, when you have someone who's talking about, like... I don't know, like spreading QAnon conspiracy theories about like deep state pedophile rings in like the U.S. government or whatever, or a deep state working to undermine Donald Trump and that he's secretly battling a cabal of pedophiles. I swear to fuck, like, I feel like anyone who watches this video should probably be like somewhat aware of this, but I feel like it just sounds so insane when I say it out loud that I need to just just at least show the Wikipedia to demonstrate that like. It alleges that a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles is running a global child sex trafficking ring and plotting against President Donald Trump, who is battling against the cabal. The theory also commonly asserts that Trump is planning a day of reckoning known as the Storm, when thousands of members of the cabal will be arrested. You know, that sounds an awfully... day of the... Is it the day of the rope? Whatever. No part of the theory is based on fact. Yeah. I'm not making this up. I promise you. But there are many pages that circulate in that. Like, I was genuinely surprised. I logged on Facebook for like a fucking week or something. I just generally have mine deleted because it's a waste of my time and I don't care about people. When I logged in, I'm like, yo, this place is out of control. People just screaming about like pedophile rings. And to an extent, like, yeah, I know that's the content I'm going to interact with. So maybe there's sort of like a loop of them like, hey, this is going to agitate him and keep him on Facebook. So maybe that's what they were showing me. But the mere fact so many people, not just like random content, right? People I knew were posting stuff about this. People I knew from high school, people I knew from college, like, what the fuck? Family members, close family, like recirculating this bullshit. And it was like pretty. I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, this is so much worse than I ever thought it could be. Even if I were to like concede that I was getting like a jilted version of like what is on Facebook, like that was leaning further right because I know it pisses me off. Like, even that jilted version is terrifying because it wasn't like, oh, here are random posts. It was like, here are people you know who subscribe to this shit and repost it.
Whereas when you look at like Instagram, for example, I think the demographics skew a lot younger. So it's just a demographic thing.
But it's like the demographics propose, who will spread like misinformation, the type and the degree of the misinformation they spread. Like the right wing perspective the like Trumpian like conservative perspective is almost entirely based off misinformation and lies, right? And this isn't to say like the left wing, like liberals or leftists or whatever, can't be misinformed. It's that generally like they don't require, like misinformation isn't required for like left-leaning perspectives, and it's not cultivated in their audiences as much. That's not to say you won't encounter people who are saying wrong stuff or who believe wrong things. He later on is going to talk about Russiagate a little bit. Like I think even back in the day, there was like some like Bush did 9/11, like which was like a democratic held belief to some extent, but whatever. Like it's like they're immune to it or they're above it. And I will never mean to put it in that way. It's that this misinformation is magnitudes worse in right wing circles, for a litany of reasons, and we can discuss those reasons and talk about how to mitigate them. But the point being, at the end of the day, this misinformation circles in those communities. Particularly bad on Facebook. Twitter did a little more earlier against it. Facebook is now acting against it. But it is actually insane that it took them this long to try and curb this, because so many people got hooked into this bullshit.
And, you get the sense that the media wants to almost engineer that to not have it be a hub of older people, or they want to, like, control the content in a way where these people get more educated and they don't fall for fake news as much. Now, listen. There's only so much you could do, right? Like, if you're going to have a place where people who are right-wing gather and people who are older gather, I mean, we all know this because we all have family members, but yeah, plenty of people believe things that are utterly ridiculous. And I don't think you could fix that by tweaking the algorithm, and I certainly don't think you could fix that without just becoming...
This is like throw your hands up, everything's hopeless. Like, we literally did this, like, previously in the past. Like, we would regulate the type of, like, misinformation the type of information that would happen on public airways, through something like the I always hesitate to talk about this a little bit because I don't know all the history of it. I've just like mostly read a Wikipedia page and a couple articles on it because it's kind of hard to find information. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was the Red Dragon Broadcasting versus... Am I remembering the court case correctly? Oh man, I'm fucking this up. FCC. Fair enough. Yeah, there we go. I figured it out. I have to prove that I'm not crazy right now. Red Lion. Okay, not Red Dragon. It was Red Lion Broadcasting. I was close. Whatever. It's something people can look up. But basically, like they did regulate like what could happen on like public radio to an extent, or public access television, since it was like limited bandwidth space. And they're like, listen, people have an interest in being informed. But like, yeah, if you give people accurate information, they will base their opinions on accurate information. Most people, when they come home and they turn on the news or they go on Facebook or whatever, are not like, oh, let me be a critical reader of media. They're just gonna like read whatever's there, adopt that into their worldview, and like whatever, So if you control what's going into there, you can control their perspectives. Now you can use that for evil deeds, right? Like, that's literally what the propagandists are doing. They're like, if we just keep showing people bad stuff, they will adopt bad views, right? Or misinformation. They will adopt misinformed views. We can do that to further our agenda or our narrative or our goals, right? I can just keep screaming how climate change isn't man-made, and all of a sudden you'll have 40% of the country who thinks like, yeah, climate change is not a big fucking deal, right? That's the whole game. He's identifying like the whole fucking game right now, okay? And we're just talking about doing that in a way that promotes people having good information, right? You could do that in a way that's bad. Like if Facebook's like no conservative perspectives at all, right? You can't talk about small government. You can't talk about infringement on, like, you have to ban talk on the Second Amendment. Like, okay, I would disagree with that, and I think it's reasonable to disagree with that, right? If you're just banning entire perspectives, but if I just say I'm banning stories that spread lies, okay, well, you catch more conservative stories up in that than like liberal-leaning stories or whatever. Well, whose fault is that? Is it them for having a bias, or is their bias against misinformation and the conservative perspective is more based on misinformation? Well, okay, if your perspective is more based on misinformation and we can demonstrate that and there's a more like open process to discuss it, then cool, fuck, yeah, do it. Like, this is necessary for these people to function. And I think I don't want this to come like overly like parental or whatever, but Like, we have a duty to our fellow citizens, to our parents, to our loved ones, to whoever, to like not allow them to get emotionally exploited by like manipulative propaganda, because that's what a lot of it relies on. Your children are going to get raped by a cabal of pedophiles. Like, of course that's terrifying if that were true. I mean, it's not true, but if they just keep repeating it, like in your head, you're like, well, fuck, if everyone's saying it, something here has to be true. And that's just how people work. Jesus Christ, I'm not getting through this video anywhere near fast enough.
Ministry of
I have a lot of opinions on this topic.
Truth effectively. And this gets to the main point, which
is...
Yeah,
Ministry of Truth.
I can't believe...
Like, any single right, like rights exist. Here's what I'll disagree with a lot of people from like a liberal or libertarian perspective. Rights are not inalienable and they're not innate. Rights exist so far as we can take them, make them, and perpetuate them. And what I mean by that is, we say, I think we should have a right to free speech, and that right exists insofar as we can protect that right to exist, right? Literally, it's just basically the tolerance paradox. Like, if I allow free speech so much to where I allow Nazis to spread propaganda, and as a result of Nazi propaganda, the country becomes Nazis, and they literally abolish. Like, this is literally the Weimar Republic that I'm describing right now. Weimar Republic was the preceding authority in Germany before like World War II. This is a very TLDR version of this, but they were like ultra liberal, like we don't have any restrictions on free speech, and the Nazis used that to do propaganda. One of the links I had here discusses that. Where is it? True or false news online, recursive patterns in echo chambers, countering propaganda. Oh, one of these articles. Oh, historical examples. Yeah. So this is an article about how the Nazis gained power. The Nazi Party popularity slowed down in areas receiving pro-government political news in the 1920s and 30s. Reverse when the Nazis. This is literally me copying and pasting stuff from the article. I think mostly. I don't think most of this is me writing it. Reverse when the Nazis gained power, radio propaganda was used to recruit new members. Media control and propaganda. Nazi votes increased disproportionately in areas with more radios and decreased in areas with, I think it was without radios. Receive increased the largest margin in areas with no radio. I gotta like look into that. I think I wrote this weird, or maybe I did write these, and that one seems weird. Authors estimate that the absence of pro-government radio in 1930 election would have given the Nazis 18% higher vote share. Yeah, like this is how people I don't know, whatever.
If people really want Mark Zuckerberg to be the Ministry of Truth, like it's funny because people, I think Glenn Greenwald pointed this out.
Oh yeah, so the point being that like these rights exist to perpetuate themselves, and underneath Weimar Germany, like they allowed pro-government, like obviously they issued like they supported pro-government propaganda, but they didn't restrict the Nazis' ability to broadcast their message, even though like hateful, resulted in genocide. Like the term blood libel I started seeing popping up a lot because I was talking to some reactionaries. The fuck? Which is hysterical. Blood libel is accusations of the Jewish people used the blood of Christians in religious rituals. Like, it's insane, but it was part of the Nazi conspiracy theory.
Everybody kind of hates Mark Zuckerberg, but then in the next breath they're like, and he should get more involved.
But we hate Mark Zuckerberg because he does nothing. And like, I think it's bad. So you can have two things that can be simultaneously true. One, Mark Zuckerberg, huge piece of shit. Actually, what's funny is his sister wrote a book. Mark Zuckerberg. Man, Zuckerberg sister book. Not All Dead White Men. And this is literally like his sister wrote this book about how like the internet served to like radicalize like misogynists and incels basically. It's actually like a pretty interesting book. I'll be honest though, I didn't finish the whole book. I read the first 2 chapters. It's not a whole long book. It's just very dry because she's got a PhD in like the classics and literature, which is not super interesting to me, but it was interesting to understand like how they fit the classics and bastardize them into like their worldview. And it's not really like, it's a very nuanced thing, but she talks about how online communities were used to like build this like false impression of like what the classics stood for and bastardize them to like this modernistic view or whatever. But it's like, yeah, we can see 2 things simultaneously. 1, Mark Zuckerberg is a piece of shit. His platform is dangerous and whatever. And 2, like, we think he should do something about it, right? Like, we're not going to nuke Facebook tomorrow. It's not going to stop existing. So if it's going to exist, I need to choose the lesser of 2 evils in this scenario, right? I'd rather have a Facebook that is bad, that tries to regulate misinformation, than a Facebook that is really bad and doesn't try to regulate misinformation, which is what Facebook has been to this point, and that's why we don't like them. Are they going to maybe block some stories that like say like, oh, Facebook bad hombre? Maybe. Are they going to block stories that are pro-union? Maybe. I don't know. They could do that, but like, okay, well, they'll probably do that anyway, and then also not block like the crazy far right conspiracy theories. Like, I don't, whatever.
Involved and determine what's allowed and what's not allowed. But you just said you hate him. You just said you don't trust his judgment.
Yeah.
You just said he has way too much power, and now you want to give him more power, and you want him to have ultimate veto power on anything that gets put on his website.
Well, there are other ways around this, but right now we have a rock and a hard place scenario, Mr. Kyle. I don't like giving Zuckerberg power. I don't think, but like you can argue with great power comes great responsibility, and that society has been pressuring him to execute that, or to like exercise more discretion here, more responsibility.
So there's a little bit of a contradiction there. Now, let's talk specifically about this case here. So, the incredibly logical follow-up question to this is people were like, okay, so you're going to ban Holocaust denial. Does that include the Armenian genocide?
Okay. The reason this is incredibly stupid, and he's going to harp on this for like at least a minute and a half right now. Come on,
what about the very recent and ongoing right now, I think, genocide of the Rohingya Muslims?
So the reason they're talking about banning Holocaust denial is because Holocaust denial fits within the anti-Semitic like conspiracy framework that Pizzagate and all this shit is based off of. And it usually fits into that perspective. No one thinks Armenians or Rohingyas or Rwandans, right? No one thinks these people are are the secret global backing cabal behind a conspiracy to like destroy Donald Trump. That is the problem, Kyle. The problem is they are different issues that people don't really deny. The Armenian genocide, except for some Turkish people in Turkey. Most places accept it. Most individuals are not online reading like incendiary stories about the Armenian genocide being real or not being real. It's just not a thing here. That's not to say it's not a thing anywhere. I'm sure if you go into like Turkey, the way like things circulate on Facebook groups that are Turkish in nature, maybe there is some Armenian genocide denial, and maybe it does play into like some sort of like worldview they have. But here in the United States or in Europe or whatever, or like Western Europe, I guess, anti-Semitism is the underlying flare. Stuff like those other genocides, the Armenian one, the Rwandan genocide, or did they say Rohingyas? I can't remember the other group he identified. There's a bunch of whole genocides and ethnic cleansings going on across the world right now, and historically that aren't subject to massive amounts of misinformation because there's no stake in that information, and that's what he's not distinguishing here.
What about Yemen? There's a genocide going on right now in Yemen. By the way, we are helping facilitate that by arming and backing Saudi Arabia, who's carrying it out.
100% true.
Babies are starving as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
So what about that? So again,
once again, not misinformation around that. If we're banning if the rule is to lower misinformation, then you want to target the things that are generating the most misinformation. No one's really lying about these things that he's talking about right now. That's the difference here. It's not a rule of, we need to ban people who are critical of genocides. It's like, no, you need to ban disinformation about the nature of like something like the Holocaust because they are so prevalent and infecting like the discourse in our society.
What was his response? He goes, oh, no, just the Holocaust of the Jews.
Yep.
Okay, I'm here to tell you guys that makes no sense. So are the Armenians not worthy?
Does it make sense?
Genocide happened.
Or are you fucking stupid?
It happened. Are they?
Oh, I forgot. Like, yes. Like, are they not important? What?
Not worthy? The Armenian genocide happened.
Oh.
It happened.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Are they not worthy of the same protections that now Facebook is giving to Jews?
Okay, let's try and come up with a metaphor for this. It's gonna take a second. Okay, let's just imagine there are two groups, both who had crimes committed against them, right? Let's say you have, I don't know, two people who are both assaulted, right? And then 5 years later, one of those groups are being threatened and assaulted, or being threatened with assaults again. The other one isn't. Well, if we're taking action now to stop like potential future assaults and future violence, like, I don't know, Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pennsylvania that happened like 2 years ago. Well, if we're taking action in this respect, who are we going to try and protect? The person, both people who were victimized in the past, but only one is being threatened now. Who do we need to protect there, Kyle? The answer is fucking obvious. The person being threatened is the one you need to protect, regardless of both of their prior victimization status. Duh. Like, Tree of Life synagogue shooting. It's really funny. People just fucking forget about all this shit. People remember like 9/11 or like the random fucking shootings in like Berkeley, or not Berkeley, like anytime a Muslim does something, people fucking can't forget it. But this guy who went into a synagogue in fucking Pittsburgh and murdered 7 people because he's fucking insane and was a far-right crazy anti-Semite, like, do you think he really didn't believe in the Armenian genocide? Do you think that came across his desk while he's reading about like how the Jews are planning to take over the world, how ethnic Jews are bad and all this shit? This is what happens from the thing they're trying to stop. There's no, when the threat starts rising against, like, I don't know, Armenians or whatever, we can talk about it. But in this country, there's not really a threat against Armenians.
You're saying Armenians are less than Jews.
Yeah, that's what we're saying, Kyle. What a fucking stupid thing. I'm sorry. This is insane.
What about the Rohingya Muslims? They don't count? They're not worthy? You can deny that genocide? Again, the point is, there's no way of doing this that's objectively correct, and there's no way to not have done.
Yeah, spoiler, Kyle. Nothing's objectively correct. Sorry, that comes off a little hyperbolic, but like, you can have things that approach a level of like understanding things objectively. Like, I have this. It's sort of complicated, but like, yeah, like, you want to use objectively, like, where this isn't about, it's about, if we were talking objectively here, we'd say like, okay, what objectively reduces more harm in the world? And if I had to say, okay, if I have to choose between these conspiracy theories, or sorry, these genocide denials, which one would lead to more harm reduction in Western Europe and the United States, or something like that, right? Well, the answer is obviously Holocaust denial, because, you know, fucking Tree of Life synagogue shooting, among other anti-Semitic acts that happen in this country. And, you know, Western Europe's history of anti-Semitism, like, it's a thing. No one in Western Europe and the United States is radicalized based off the Armenian genocide. It just doesn't happen.
Double standards and not be a hypocrite.
That's the quote-unquote objective line you draw here.
Now, if there's enough pressure, what's the next step he'll do? He will say, okay, I'm going to ban questioning of the Armenian genocide. I'm going to ban questioning of the Rohingya Muslim genocide. I'm going to ban questioning of the genocide in Yemen, right? And
like, once again, I do need to double down here and just say, like, does this mean I now love Mark Zuckerberg, or that we embrace wholeheartedly Mark Zuckerberg? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that we understand that, like, the status quo as is damaging to our country. The polarization we experience, the radicalization and the misinformation stems in large part from the misinformation driving these engines of radicalization. You gotta cut the legs out from under that, or you're going to have a society that devolves to like where the fuck we are today. Donald Trump is our fucking president, okay? This is not a thing that's been it's kind of been put on crack over the last like 8 years, like particularly through like the advent of the internet and people figuring out sort of how to abuse algorithms and shit like that. But the right-wing misinformation machine has been stoking fear, anger, and hostility since the 80s, or I guess late 80s, pretty much. Now I have to go into like another related history lesson. So like, I don't know what percentage of people are aware of this, but the largest terrorist attack on U.S. soil before 9/11, and still the second deadliest terrorist attack, is the Oklahoma City bombing. Oklahoma City bombing. The Oklahoma City bombing was committed by Timothy McVeigh with some co-conspirators. These guys were radicalized by anti-government conspiracy theory. He read the Turner Diaries, which is... It's kind of weird when you're out west. The like his primary motivating factor was definitely like anti-government extremism, but like he definitely had white nationalist like sympathies as well. Even though I don't think there's many cases of him just saying like, I hate the n-words or whatever. Where the hell is that? I usually use Firefox. Use it for this only. Turner. Yeah, so one of the things he had was a copy of the Turner Diaries, which the Turner Diaries is like one of these pieces of like right wing fucking fiction that has radicalized so many people, and it's about like overthrowing the U.S. government, a white nationalist takeover of everything through this like day of like violence. And then there's something about the day on the rope, like, and it inspired people like him. Now, he existed in this echo chamber, or not echo chamber, but, well, yeah, I guess it sort of is an echo chamber. He existed being inundated with this right-wing conspiracism and, like, anti-government extremism that was perpetuated by people like Rush Limbaugh, right? Without someone like Rush Limbaugh, maybe stuff like this doesn't happen. And when this happened underneath Bill Clinton's presidency, Bill Clinton made a very tepid speech saying, like, hey, we need to calm down with, like, the insane, like, rhetoric we're using, because, like, this is what happens. That's pretty much what he said. And Rush Limbaugh lost his fucking mind. Let's see if it pops up on here. Rush Limbaugh, Oklahoma City bombing. Rush Limbaugh, Bill Clinton, square off. Who's encouraging extreme? Okay, this is really old. That's a 10-year-old article. Fuel domestic terrorism, or is conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh right? The former President Clinton and Obama soon could have blood on their hands. Okay, whatever. I don't know what this article is, but like he just basically made some like tepid criticism of that, because like Rush Limbaugh like has pretty much just been he's been roughly as insane as he is today as he is now for like the last like I don't know 30 years of his fucking godforsaken life, and like to say like he's solely responsible for this would be a lie, but to say he's not responsible for this at all would probably also be wrong. He probably played a role in this radicalization by spreading like fear and hate across like literally the airwaves, and government distrust and whatever. And like this is the stuff that happens from that, and like this tepid criticism like just didn't even like go through. So I don't know, whatever. And like the whole like this all I guess gets pulled together. Rush Limbaugh's capacity to exist on a radio network comes as a result of the Fairness Doctrine being repealed. You can look at this, eliminated the policy in 1987. Let's see. Rush Limbaugh radio show. Let's see. It's going to literally be like the year of Rush Limbaugh. Jesus Christ. Like this like influx of like right-wing radio personalities occurred in right after they repealed the Fairness Doctrine, which required them to discuss things like in a nonpartisan manner and like give equal weight to both sides. Now they didn't have to give equal weight. They didn't have to play both sides of it. He can just start screaming about incoherent bullshit. Early radio career, 1988. Say like 1988. It's literally the year after they repealed the Fairness Doctrine. He was able to start up his radio show as it exists today. Like these things are related, and they're like there's this causal chain you can identify.
Right? Like, okay, so now you've set the precedent. And now you're enforcing the principle in a more objective way. Let's take it a step further.
Okay, so Kyle fundamentally doesn't understand the principle that they're using here, which is really annoying. Like, you think you'd at least be able to accurately interpret like the rule that they're trying to lay out and follow, which is harm reduction through attacking the most virulent forms of misinformation in our society, not attacking all information. If anything, like this more or less fits into his worldview. We don't censor everything. We censor things that have materially proven to be problems. Now, I think I'm a little more maybe proactive in this respect, where like I would be in favor of like a more aggressive not censoring, well I guess censoring in certain extents, but like policing misinformation, like with Facebook, and I think it's like YouTube, right? If you look up like a video on climate change on YouTube, let's say, like I'm pretty sure there's going to be a disclaimer, climate change fake. Let's do it. Like, okay, I didn't really do it here, but
this is the story.
Okay, there we go. See, like there's this whole like tag underneath, like, oh, here, read the Wikipedia page on climate change or whatever. Here's some, and like they'll do that on videos. I think that's a good start. And I think less insidious stuff could benefit from little tags like that, and like the more pervasive and more damaging material, which like we'll have to figure out some method of classification and dealing with it. You'd have to like link ban or whatever.
similar to what they did with that New York Post story, based on like once again lying about Joe Biden's. So it's still developing, but basically the Twitter, I think Facebook too, banned a link from a New York Post story that was talking about Joe Biden, his son, and Burisma again, and just seemingly making up unsubstantiated bullshit. And it was based on like a story basically planted by Rudy Giuliani. And it's like, come on, guys.
The whole reason why you would ban questioning of the Holocaust is because it's an anti-Semitic thing usually that people do. It's like Nazis who are usually questioning it, right? So the problem is it's anti-Semitic. Well,
no, the problem is that Nazis fit this into like their general perspective, and that Nazis are prevalent in the United States and Western Europe. I don't know why I keep just adding Western Europe in, but I feel like I want to like specify that this is like regional things, that this can be a problem with. Like the U.S. is also very anti-Semitic, even leading into World War II. It's just like we ended up going against the Nazis, who did a genocide, which very heavily curbed U.S. views of anti-Semitism.
Other anti-Semitic conspiracies about how like the Jews run the world. Should you ban that? Now again, if you're really enforcing this principle, you'd say, well, yeah, because that's one of the arguments that leads down the path where you're eventually at Holocaust denial.
Yep.
It's not true that Jews run the world, so it's factually wrong. So
Jews,
and
we
usually
run the
it's
world,
accompanied by
Jews.
Even worse conspiracies. So yeah, I guess we'll ban that too. Okay, now take it one step further. What if somebody's mad that George Soros is donating to politicians? And they tweet about that.
What's funny is like George Soros fits within these right-wing like fear-mongering like narratives or whatever, where they talk about like George Soros, he's the evil Jewish demigod who's donating to the leftist causes and funding Antifa. God, I can't do that Alex Jones voice. That physically caused me pain. Oh shit. Okay. What time is it? Okay.
Or they, not tweet, Twitter's on my mind. I mean, they post something on Facebook about that.
All right, I got like 10 minutes to wrap
George
this up.
Soros gave X amount of money to this politician. This is corruption. What about that? Should you leave that up, or do you pull it down? There are plenty of people who overstate the influence of George Soros.
Yep.
But to act like he has no influence and that he doesn't donate to politicians and doesn't get involved in these causes because he gets something out of it as well. This is the way politics works. It's massively corrupt.
So like, what's funny is like the entire George Soros thing underpins like the Hungarian, Viktor Orban, I think his name, Viktor Orban, George Soros, because he's like a Hungarian Jew. So Viktor Orban's like the Hungarian prime minister who's like pretty like, I don't know the full history, but my general understanding is that he's like pretty fascist adjacent, right? Very Trumpian in construct. And one of the people he constantly demonizes is George Soros, who plays into that radicalizing of them. So like unironically, Kyle is giving a great example of like, oh yeah, like a nuanced discussion of George Orwell, George Soros can be justified, and like, you want to be able to have those good faith criticisms, but you need to balance it out by saying like, listen, the people who are like, he's a dirty Jew trying to take over the world, you need to like, that can't be acceptable.
What about that? What do you do there? By the way, again, once you say we're going to get rid of the conspiracy theories, okay, you start with this one. What about the 9/11 conspiracy theory? What about JFK being assassinated? The conspiracies around that.
So once again, it's Kyle misunderstanding the principle and then just making random other complaints. I don't think there's a whole lot more to go into in this video. I'll watch the rest of it in a little bit without commenting on it, because I do have to wrap this up, because I told a friend I'd meet him at the gym in like 25 minutes. But like, the principle here is harm reduction through the most vitriolic, whatever, we'll just say vitriolic, like misinformation that's spreading, right? Does that mean you have to like every single stupid, okay, we'll finish this in 9 minutes. We'll fast forward a little bit.
Where the thing that's called the conspiracy is actually percent.
Yeah, I get it, right? That's why you only ban the most fringe ones.
There are going to be instances where they pull stuff down where they're wrong. Lead up to the Iraq War. If they were as big and as... This isn't true. They're lying to you. Saddam Hussein does not have weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein is not a threat to the United States of America. I think we're the aggressor.
So if that were like well established, like, I get what he's saying, right? What if the George W. Bush administration used like oh, it's misinformation and say like there's no yellow cake uranium in like fucking Iran or whatever. Like yeah, but like the Holocaust denial and like Holocaust like fear mongering and conspiracy theory shit. This is well debunked for decades. I don't even think captures it accurately, right? The Jewish like fear mongering. Yeah, like we've known this is wrong for a long fucking time. Now, a developing story, I'm a little more lenient on, right? So, for example, like the Joe Biden Ukraine thing or Burisma thing that the New York Post tried like propping up, which got censored by Twitter and Facebook or whatever. This is a debunked conspiracy theory that's being used to manipulate people. Yes, yes, this should be censored because it's specifically designed right before an election to manipulate people's opinions. Now, is it a very poor attempt? I would think yes. This has already been dealt with. This is coming from an unreliable source, not just the New York Post, but like Rudy Giuliani being one of the sources underpinning that, and it's dealing with debunked information already and engaging in a stupid narrative again. So like, okay, we can censor that short term, and then like while they're doing fact checking on it to like evaluate the New York Post sources and everything. Okay, well, because I don't think the sources were even secret. Like to just analyze, like, okay, literally just have to prove did that meeting happen? Not just was there this email of whatever intent, right? Like I don't know why the Biden. Okay, this is unrelated, so I'm not going to go down this route right now. But yeah, like okay, if you want to like regulate some stories that are perpetuating like constant misinformation, like I get it, but like this isn't an akin example. And if that were the case, like yeah, we'd probably yell at Facebook about that too.
I think
he's gonna bitch about Russia. He's gonna bitch about like RussiaGate right now or whatever, and say like, oh, like see, RussiaGate was also crazy. Should we have banned that? And it's like, I need to do a little more research on the RussiaGate shit. RussiaGate was not a hoax. Yeah, like he says RussiaGate was a hoax. Like I know he's saying that like it's 100% true, but the general idea of like Russia worked to influence our election and that Donald Trump's campaign worked with Russia to win is accurate. Now, saying that Donald Trump is like a Putin puppet who, you know, was a plant by the Kremlin, like this Manchurian candidate as he's going to call it in this video, obviously that's not fucking true, but like I don't think that's an accurate representation of what most people were saying in relation to Russiagate. They're like, yeah, Russia had undue influence in his campaign in our election that was corrupt in nature to try and undermine our democracy, which they succeeded in doing. They worked to help the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign accepted that help. The reason why they couldn't prove conspiracy or whatever, not collusion, collusion is not a legal term. The reason they couldn't prove conspiracy is because conspiracy usually requires like an exchange. Like, we give you this, you give us that. But like, it was just the Russians saying like, here, we're going to give you help and not asking for anything in return. So the Trump campaign didn't really give them much in return. Now you can argue that their gains weren't material, right? Their gains weren't like, give me $100,000 and I'll give you this dirt on Hillary Clinton. It was more like their material benefit is the destabilizing of Western democracies and the United States as a result of that. That is their material gain, and they're getting that. But like just arguing like, oh, Donald Trump being elected is their gain, and it's like, okay, like that's a little nebulous. I understand that, and you can't really like that would be a really tough like sell in a criminal indictment. But like I get why they couldn't indict on that, but that doesn't mean like we shouldn't like as a society be opposed to like what happened there. But like his like position that this is like, I mean, like the straw man that the Russia investigation is like a belief in Trump as a Manchurian candidate is like patently absurd.
Holds up to violate the UN. Facebook would have looked at that person and said, we'll pull that down because that's a conspiracy.
Nope.
And they would have ran with the fake news. Russiagate, you don't even have to go all the way back to the Iraq War. They would have aided in the propaganda for the Iraq War and not thought twice about it and banned the people who were correct.
Bro, they're already doing that, right? Or they have been doing that until now. Now is actually their attempt to get rid of the misinformation as opposed to embrace the misinformation like he's talking about. Like the New York Times posted a story about like yellow cake uranium that was planted by Cheney, right? Or Cheney planted a story in the New York Times and then cited that story himself to justify the invasion of Iraq or whatever. About yellow cake uranium, I think it was. Like he's just conflating so many. Okay, we're just gonna wrap this here because I gotta go. But he's conflating so many fucking things here, and it's like mind-numbingly frustrating. Because it's like these are bad faith criticisms, right? We're like, we need to talk about like what the paradigms of this are, but he doesn't actually care about the paradigms of like what degree should we do censoring. He's more like, we shouldn't do censoring at all, ever, under any circumstance. Fuck y'all. YOLO swag, deal with it. And it's like, it's not hard to understand why that is not very satisfying. Because he's leaving all the problems intact. But all right, we're gonna end that here. I'll watch the next 5 minutes and decide if I think the rest of that's worth responding to. But there's enough there to like work with. Obviously, this video's got to be over an hour long. I looked at my watch like it was going to tell me that. I have no idea when I started this. Fucking Kyle.